What's up guys, today we're going over one of the strongest builds the game's ever seen, using the new hunter exotic, the Renewal Grass, which are arguably the best exotic in the game and results in one of the strongest builds ever. Now I haven't really reviewed any of the exotics so far, and I'm definitely realizing that is a mistake. I should have put up a video on this a long time ago because of how strong it is. So in this video we're going to be going over exactly what this exotic does and going over that build. So looking at the exotic perk, your dust-filled grenades have a much larger effect radius. Allies inside the dust field take reduced damage, and targets inside the area deal reduced damage. So we first look at how this increase to the radius works. Normal with nothing else going on. As you see, it's not that big at all, it's just a normal size. Now we put the exotic on, it's gonna get much larger. And as you see, there is already a stasis crystal in the middle. And as you see on my subclass, I do not have Touch of Winter on, so it just creates one by default with this exotic, and you can further combo that with the Touch of Winter to make it even larger. So if we look at that with both the exotic and Touch of Winter on to get 2 increases to the radius of the Dusk Cloud. As you see, it is very large now, pretty much taking up this entire area, and it will last for 7 seconds. And you can further increase the duration with Whisper of Durance, which will increase the duration of your slow effects, which does work with the Dust-Filled Grenade. As you see now, not only is the grenade huge, we can also make it now last for 11 seconds, which is quite a long time, and it's taking up such a large area. So not only is it huge and lasts forever now, it will also reduce the damage you take while inside of it, not only you, but also all of your allies. Also on top of that, if the enemy that is shooting at you is inside the dust field, they will do less damage to you. All of these effects will be able to stack together. And the third thing you can do to further increase the damage resistance is run the fragment right here, the Whisper of Chains, which will make it so when you're nearby the crystal, you will also receive less damage from targets. So now you can be inside the bubble, which means you take less damage and the enemy does less damage. Then also next to the crystal is a third one, so you get resist times 3. And it's always hard to track down numbers in PvE, so I just looked up a PvP video, and the one I found was Drewski's to get some numbers, so I'll definitely link that down below. And you and your allies will receive 15% less damage in the bubble. Any enemy in the bubble will do 50% less damage, and the fragment is also a 25% increase to resistance, so overall they stack for a total of 67% if both you and the enemy are inside the dusk field. So these nades are huge, last forever, and are extremely strong, and there's a very simple build to make them overlap forever, and that's gonna be double grenade kickstart on your gloves, which means you need stasis gloves. Then we use the Whisper of Shards. That way when we destroy the crystal in the middle, we'll get 5 seconds of increased grenade recharge rate. Then finally, all you need is 100 discipline, and what happens is you throw the grenade, simply break the crystal to get the improved ability regeneration for 5 seconds, and as you see, well before your first dust field even is done, you already have another one, and that will just work in every activity in the game and just have 100% uptime on this ability, which is huge and will make it so you never die. And the reason this works is because the Dust-Filled Grenade has such a low base cooldown of 1 minute and 4 seconds compared to the other grenades being over 2 minutes, so the Dust-Filled just naturally comes back so fast. And right there alone, you already have an infinite combo on this grenade, but of course, knowing me, we're gonna go even further, so we have Grim Harvest as our second aspect to create stasis shards whenever we defeat a slowed or frozen target. We have fissures to increase the radius and damage of all these stasis explosions. Then we have shards as we showed off before. Then if you're playing super defensively, I think the Whisper Chains would be a good pick, but I think overall in PvE the better pick will be the Whisper of Rime to get overshowed whenever we collect these stasis shards, which will be all kinds of them in this build. Then we have the Whisper of Rending to make our kinetic weapons do more damage to frozen enemies and stasis crystals, which will be almost all the enemies and also the crystal that spawns in on our dusk field. Then we have the Whisper Endurance to increase the duration of the dust field as we showed off. So now how this works is we can one hit the crystal in the middle with our kinetic weapon of choice, which makes it obviously super efficient to break it. When we do that, we'll get the 5 seconds of the improved grenade recharge rate. Along with fissures, it will pretty much just kill everything inside the radius of the dusk field. And finally, all those targets that die will create a shard. Picking those up will give us a chunk of overshield. And as you'll see in gameplay later on, we'll have that overshield pretty much maxed out forever, and you just simply cannot die with this build. And now looking at our weapons of choice, you want a headstone stasis weapon in your connect slot. My favorite is still Ice Luna. There's all kinds of ones this season that came out, so you can use something like the Forensic Nightmare, the SMG. I believe there's also a Pulse and an AR, so whatever one you have will work. Then in my heavy slot, I have the Palmera, which is also stasis and one of the best rockets in the game, and this will be our single target damage weapon, which frees up our exotic for our energy. And I'm going to be using the Dead Messenger for two reasons. One is to be extremely good at killing everything that gets pulled in with our Duskfield grenades. And number two, the Catalyst will be another way to get overshowed whenever we break a combatant shield. And finally, because both of our other weapons are stasis, this gives us access to all three of the other elements to break shields, which will be really good for match game content. And finally, looking at our mods, we have 1 Bountiful Wells, then 3 stacks of Elemental Ordnance. And what this will allow is whenever we throw a grenade, that little crystal in the middle, any enemy that dies from that crystal shattering counts as grenade kills, which means we'll create 4 stasis Elemental Wells per grenade that we throw, which means we get our grenade extremely fast and all of our abilities in general too. So yeah, the ability spam on this is incredibly high. And our final mod on our gloves will be Font of Might, because 1, it's practically all we can fit, and 2, we have 2 stasis weapons on anyways, so getting that weapon buff to both our headstone weapon of choice and our rocket for single target damage is great. And with how many stasis wells we'll be creating, we'll have that all the time. And some of the other mods we have on, I have Harmonic Siphon along with Ashes to Assets, because we'll get all kinds of grenade final blows. And finally, on my class item, I have Double Bomber. Whenever we dodge, we'll get chunks of our grenade back, so just yet another way to get our grenade very quick. So now with this build, we have insane group backclear between just all the stasis stuff going on and our Dead Messenger. We're gonna have constant overshield because of these shards and breaking shields with our Dead Messenger Catalyst. And finally, pretty much every square foot meter of every arena we'll ever be in will be fully covered with Duskfield grenades, which means every enemy will be doing 60 to 67% less damage to us depending on what your fragment is. So yeah, you just simply cannot die with this build, and it's absolutely insane for Ackler. It really is the best of everything. And then for boss fights, what you want to do is just constantly throw the grenade at the boss, which will make them do 50% less damage, and freeze them constantly, which means whenever you shatter a frozen target, it does a little burst of damage, which will increase your DPS. Then if you're using a connect weapon, for example, the Zoggy Burden with the fragment, you also get a chunk of more damage. It's not a lot, but it's definitely noticeable, and will just further increase your DPS. And if you're doing harder content where you can get kills with the crystal detonation, then I'd be using the Dead Messenger more often on all the enemies in the Duskfield. And with that, you want to run triple Explosive Wellmaker instead of triple Ordnance. And what this will do is, instead of creating 4 stasis wells, it'll create 4 solar wells. In all the same situations, you would be creating the stasis ones before, but now it'll also work with whatever element your Dead Messenger is. So you'll be getting those 4 solar wells all the time, and as long as you're only using your grenade, you'll still get the full amount of energy for your grenade anyways. So it works out the exact same way. The one difference is you can't use Font of Might, which isn't that big a deal, but at the same time, if you can use the Ordnance version of this, it's gonna be better just because of that. However, if you're using the solar version, you could try to sneak in a Well of Life, which will give you constant health regen also on top of everything else. So yeah, you just would never die, even if you tried. And overall, you can make this build work for champions very easily. Between your kinetic slot, either the Ice Luna or the SMG or AR, you can have either Unstoppable or Overload. And if you're doing the solo Legend Lost Sector where you need 2 champion mods, you could easily run double primary and just use your rocket for the champions and boss fight. Or for example, if it's Overload and Unstoppable, you can use something like the SMG, then a Glaive, that way you still have a special. So you can easily change up your weapons to make it work with whatever champions you need. And overall, the fact that you can just simply throw this grenade every like 3 seconds and freeze everything in PvE, pull them all to the center, constantly give yourself overshield as you see in this gameplay. I think I have practically full overshield the entire way. Then on top of that, everything inside the Duskfield grenade will be doing 60% less damage to you and your allies. Is just, I mean, you just can't die, man. Like, you actually just cannot die with this build. And there is really no part of this game where I don't see this being extremely useful. Like, even in a day 1 raid setting where you're 20 under and you don't know the encounters, just simply throwing these at your fire team constantly will just give them crazy survivability. And the fact that even without any of the mods on, just simply throwing the grenade and shooting the crystal is already an infinite combo, is just so powerful that I just see this being useful everywhere. And yeah, I think that is pretty much it for the build. The rest of the video will just be some strike gameplay. So yeah, this build is definitely pretty strong, arguably the strongest ever in Destiny, and I will definitely link the dim loadout below, along with Drewski's PvP testing video. Like usual, thanks for watching, catch you guys next time.